Now, the next thing I mentioned was the TNG themes about the Borg. This is a little more abstract and a little more subjective, but ever since I saw the motion picture for the first time back when I was a preteen or a teenager, the moment that I realized, so as you move toward the end of the movie, the moment I realized that V'ger was wanting to merge with a human, I instantly thought, with eager anticipation, I'm thinking to myself, oh, it's going to be the Borg. Or I was hoping, I thought to myself, I didn't think the Borg were in the TOS era, but I was on the edge of my seat waiting to hopefully it was going to be the Borg. Because at that point, I was a super big fan of all stories about the Borg. And since I was very much bored watching this boring motion picture film, I was so eagerly hoping it was going to be the Borg, but of course it wasn't. But then more recently, I discovered that apparently in the Shatnerverse, apparently Shatner has created a story in which it is revealed that the machine planet that Voyager 6 landed on actually was either the Borg or the precursors to the Borg or something like that. Which that description doesn't make a lot of sense to me just based on that soundbite. But what the part that's interesting to me is that somebody else has compared V'ger to the Borg. Since after all, V'ger did go around assimilating or absorbing everything in its path, just like the Borg. And after all, V'ger is all about this goal of ultimately merging the mechanical with the human, just like the Borg. And even though there's no official origin story for the Borg, I have always imagined that the origin story for the Borg would probably have been some kind of a mix of the TMP story kind of thing mixed with the sorts of things we see in the Voyager episode Survival Instinct and the Voyager episode Cooperative. So in Cooperative, if I remember right, there are some former Borg on a small colony, and they can communicate telepathically because they still have a couple of implants left under the skin. And then at one point, they put an implant in Chakotay in order to invite him into their thoughts, into their little network of telepathic connection, so they can communicate better, if I remember right. And then in the episode Survival Instinct, that's the one where there's a flashback where they show us Seven back when she was Borg and she crash landed with these 3 other drones and they were all severed from the collective. And then she's getting really frustrated. They want to be free. And then so she, in order to keep them in line, she reassimilates them and makes a mini collective out of them. So kind of a way to force her will. So I've always imagined that the origin of the Borg would have been kind of a mix of these 3 concepts. So off on some planet, these well-intentioned aliens, off on some planet in the Delta Quadrant, they have been optimistically planning for the next stage of their evolution. And so they add various cyborg parts so they can become stronger, they can make life more convenient, have an extra arm, have a special eyeball thing, all that kind of good stuff. And then they decide to add some kind of technology-assisted telepathy to improve communication, improve society and culture and all that. And then we end up having certain groups of people. These certain groups end up being in these little circles where this group of people, they're all telepathically linked in their little group, kind of like in the episode Cooperative, where we just got this group of people and they're not Borg drones, they're just connected. They can hear each other's thoughts. It's kind of cool. But then, either on purpose or on accident, that changes. So if it's on accident, then we'd say it gradually evolves into where the group has overridden the individuality of the individuals. Or if it's on purpose, then it would be more like Seven, where somebody goes in and they flip a switch so that it overrides the individuality. But anyway, so that's how I've always imagined the origin for the Borg happening. And I recognize there are plenty of other theories floating around out there. But to me, that was what kind of came together for me, particularly when I was a preteen watching through Voyager and I saw Cooperative and I'm like, oh, this is how it happened. But anyway, so all that to say, that's one of the other parallels that I think, for me at least, relates at least loosely to the TMP story. I think just like Where No Man Has Gone Before is kind of a flip side of the idea of human frailty and what it would mean for a man to become godlike. I think in the same way, the Borg stories in TNG and other Star Trek, they've always felt to me a little bit like it's the flip side of this idea in TMP of technological mergers playing a role in the next stage of human evolution, because the Borg really are kind of a horror version of that TMP ideal gone wrong. All right, and then there are those 3 Voyager episodes I mentioned, which have always kind of reminded me of this film here. So in the episode Warhead, Voyager finds a damaged AI ship kind of thing, a tiny little ship kind of thing, crashed on a planet, and they repair it. And it's friendly at first, but then they find out what it actually is. It's a